Hi there, in this video I'm going to show you something you've probably never ever thought about or heard about. So just to set the scene a little bit, if you've ever developed a Power App or even a web app and you are got a single screen, say it's a sales dashboard for instance, and you need that screen to change without any user interaction, what you normally do is drop a timer control on, you set it to run say every second, and then every second what you do is you go to the back-end database and you go, is there any data? Yes, no, yes, no. If there is, bring it down, then you probably refresh the screen or at least refresh the control. Now, this way is perfectly okay for small use cases. However, it can become really inefficient. For example, a good example is if you look at the Microsoft Word application out there, Microsoft introduced something called co-authoring. And if I've got a 2 meg document open and all my team have got it open, what you can currently do is you can go into Word and you can see who's editing, so you get their initials there. If you did that with the timer control, what you'd have to do is anytime John on the team types in a change into that, what would happen is in my version, I'd have to have every second saying, is there any changes? Oh yes, John's changed it. Right, okay, so I probably need to go and get the full document and refresh it. Oh, Fraser's also changed it. So you'd end up with horrible synchronization issues and a horrible waste of data. What I've done here is in ChatGPT, I've asked it to give me the benefits of polling. I won't mention them all because some of them are quite geeky, but I just want to bring your attention to the real-time communications, which is what SignalR is. So SignalR is built on something called, it supports WebSockets, which is a browser technology that allows you to do this peer-to-peer type communication without going anywhere near a server. SignalR builds on top of that, and it's effectively opens up a connection. So think of it like a telephone operator. When your screen creates a connection to SignalR, it's like making a phone call, and the telephone operator keeps the phone call open. And so what will happen is the telephone operator, when he gets a message that somebody else with the same screen open or maybe a back-end data service has changed the data, the telephone operator goes, oh, there's some changes here. So what I need to do, if I've got 1 million people listening, I need to go and tell them about the changes. So it goes, sprays them all down. So it's like them shouting on all of the phone calls. And then those applications can then refresh themselves. So it's massively efficient. And then the other thing is, again, on efficiencies, as I've mentioned, SignalR only sends data when there's data to send, unlike regular polling where requests are made at fixed intervals. So how would you use this? What's some of the use cases for it? So I've asked ChatGPT to give me some real-world use cases where SignalR could be used in a Power App. So real-time dashboards, so you could have a stock price screen where you want to go and refresh the data and it just refreshes it on the screen and it sends it down when the stock price is changed. Chat messaging, I'm going to show you exactly how to do this in this full-length tutorial, which just takes you step by step. Collaborative apps, again, the app I'm building is, I go into a bit how it could be a collaborative app. So Word is a good example of how you can collaborate on a document at the same time. I've got the idea of having some kind of video approval system in this app, which I'll show you. Real-time alerts and monitoring. So you could have, for instance, say, for example, you've got a Power App open and something has happened on the shop floor and you need to alert everybody. So you could send a message down and everybody will get the alert in the Power App. So it's good for those real-time messaging situations. Order and inventory tracking, interactive games. It's very big in gaming. So Connor on the team, he's actually going through every week. He's building up a poker app. And currently he's using Refresh. So it's a multi-user poker game. He's building in Power Apps and he's using the refresh controls on a timer, and that could become efficient. So I know Connor, once he's got that built, he's going to try and plumb in SignalR to it as well. So it's really good for games. Polling and voting, awesome for those. So you could create like a voting app where the whole company's open on a particular screen, and you want them to vote on something, they click vote, and then obviously everybody gets the latest scores. Real-time scheduling appointments, live data entry, and progress updates. So that's hopefully in a nutshell why I put this whole demo together. Before we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the end product is, so the proof of concept we're creating, and then hopefully you'll get the good grasp of what we're going to build, because once I've done that, we go through the entire build step by step. So let's get started. So what I've got here is I've got 2 instances of my Power App open. It's really simple. I've got a media player there, an input control there, a gallery here, and also an input control of a button there to send a message. Let's get started. And let's say this is a hello message. Right, send that. So what we should see immediately, that's coming there. So that's not been done by a timer control that's causing refresh on the data store. That literally is SignalR sending the message down. So I've got 2 instances here, but I could have a million instances. And if I sent that message, it would appear on all of the Power App screens with a million users watching at the same time. It's ultra efficient. The other example I've got is, it's very similar. I just wanted to show you the possibilities. If I want to go and pop a video in here, let's open, just so you're seeing that in the background. Let's go pop a video in there. So what's happened there? The video's come back. It should, there you go, there's Lando Norris, and he's appeared on both videos. So you can see here, there's like massive applications to something like this. You could, obviously, chat client is one of the biggest ones that you want to build, because that's, chat clients have become so popular everywhere. They're in Teams, they're in WhatsApp, they're Messenger, they're all over the place, and they're all probably going to be built on technologies like SignalR using WebSockets underneath. You could easily create some kind of collaborative video approval system. For example, I've just got it where the player's just playing, but effectively, for example, if I was the one controlling the video and I'd got 10 other members of staff looking at the same screen on their Power App, I could be seeking through this video, and at 30 seconds, I could pause it and ask everybody to comment in the chat, and then you could do something which is where you look at the timestamp of the video and you say all of the people, these are the comments at 30 seconds on this video, go and save those to a database. So you could create, like a, without too much effort to be honest, a way to collaboratively approve videos. There's tons of applications for this. Obviously, you need to go and watch the video on YouTube if you want to see more about the reasons why SignalR is better than something like using a refresh control. But the purpose of this video is I want to show you step by step how to create it all. To create the solution, it's going to require us to create 4 things. Azure SignalR at the top. Now, Azure SignalR is the service that Microsoft hosts to allow us to create several connections, which I always use the example, it is like a telephone operator, where when a Power App joins for the first time, it will give Azure SignalR a ring on the phone, and it will open a call and it won't hang up the call. So it's a permanent connection open between that instance and Azure. And if a million people do it, the Azure SignalR will have a million open phone calls, so that when something happens, so you could have a service that calls into Azure SignalR and says, hey, send this message, something's happened, send it down to a million people instantaneously, and you'll have a million people updating their screens at the same time. Below that, you need a Azure function, which actually, because Azure's actually quite almost done. It's just does one job, which is to manage connections and send messages. So what we have to do in order to send the messages in, you need some kind of infrastructure to do it. So we use something called an Azure function, which doesn't require a server. Again, it's a Microsoft Azure, what they call serverless application, which is a function, a piece of code you write, you put inside of the Azure function, which talks to SignalR. And then the next part is you need something that talks to the Azure function to tell it to do something. And that's what we call the PCF component. So a PCF component allows you to create another control inside of Power Apps. So if you look at all these controls here, there'll be PCF components, and you can create your own. So for example, I've created one in a previous build for our Club 365 tool belt that allows us to create a form based on JSON. I did all that for PCF component. And so you create PCF component, you implement 3 methods, you package it up and you deploy it into your solutions into a solution. And then what you do then is you publish it, and then it becomes available inside your Power App for you to use. And then the final part is you need the Power App, i.e. this screen here, which is got the user interface that the user is going to interact with. So this screen here has standard controls, and then you can't see, there's a hidden PCF control on here, which is invisible to you, which has got various properties that we use to control what messages and what YouTube video to play. So without further ado, let's have a look how to create the Azure SignalR service. So to create the Azure SignalR service, you need to just simply log into the Microsoft Azure portal. You obviously need a subscription, and pick Azure SignalR. So you can search for it on here as well. I've obviously got, well, I'll just pick it there. So SignalR, and you want to go to create, and you need to pick your active subscription. pick a resource group. Now, a resource group very simply is a way of grouping lots of services together. I've got one already called SignalR Functions Group, funnily enough. Give it a name. It doesn't need to be unique because other people are using this domain as well, because this ends up as a public endpoint that anybody can call. Let's call it C365 SignalR Demo. Hopefully nobody's got that. Now, pricing tiers. You can, let me just talk you through these quickly. A connection is obviously, remember my example of a phone call, a connection is like having a phone call from a instance in a web browser to Azure SignalR. The free tier, absolutely perfect for this. So that'll give you 20 connections, so you could have effectively had 20 people in your team just playing around with it, with 20,000 messages a day. And then obviously you can't do things like scaling as well. But you can also have standard and premium, and obviously they go up based on the number of connections you're allowed, the number of messages you're allowed, SLAs, whether it's up or not, because this is, you're not going to get the best performance of this one, whereas these have got SLAs that are really quite big, 99.95%. So if your application is absolutely critical, you need to be looking at premium. Whether it auto scales, so obviously if your application's under load, so imagine you're running an event and you're getting more users than you thought, you can get it to auto scale. And then obviously you can add custom domains, so if you don't like that domain there, you can create your own. But for the purpose of this, literally just go free, because we're only going to test it for ourselves. You might want to send it to a colleague, but that'll be absolutely fine. Select that and then review and create. And all you need to do really is just go create here. Then that's going to take a bit of time for creating the deployment. Okay, so that took a couple of minutes, and now let's go to the resource. So that's now deployed for us. Let's go and have a look at the SignalR. There isn't a great deal to do here, and certainly for the purposes of this demo, you don't really need to know about hardly any of this. All you need to know is once you've connected, so once your Power App's running, you'll be able to see the connections coming in and the messages going backwards and forwards. Obviously, this becomes really important if you do decide to take SignalR and run it into production. Then this is a really good way of monitoring all the traffic that's coming in, all the phone calls that are happening. The only thing we need to do really is we need to go into here, into keys. Now I'm going to delete this after this, so I'm not really worried about sharing the key. It can take a while to load this for the first time. I'm not sure, I'm just going to bounce that and click on it again. There we go, and then what you need to do is copy that to the clipboard. Copy the connection string to the clipboard, because we're going to need that in the next phase, because the next part we're going to do is the Azure function. And the Azure function needs to know how to connect to this instance of the Azure SignalR. So we need to copy that because that's its way of saying this is where it is. So copy that to the clipboard, and that's pretty much all you need to do. Okay, so the next piece of the puzzle is to create our 3 Azure functions. Now the Azure functions job is mainly to take information from the PCF component and interact with Azure SignalR. That's all it does. It just takes the messages, passes them backwards and forwards, and creates the connections. To create a Azure function, you don't need to create a web server or anything like that. It's known as serverless. So all we need to do is create a function app, and an Azure function, if you don't know, is literally a piece of code that you just stick in Azure that you can call and trigger, and it'll just run. For example, if you wanted to send an email, you could create a function which is literally send email to, from, subject, body, and then you could call it via several different mechanisms, and it'll just run and it'll close down again. So they're really efficient and really cheap. So let's go create a function app. So I'm in the Azure portal again, and what I want to do is create a function app, and I'm going to go and create one, and I'm going to call it, I'm going to pick the resource group as we had before, SignalR Functions. I'm going to call it C365 SignalR Demo Functions. Okay, that's unique, that's perfect. Runtime stack, all we need to do is we're going to go and pick Node.js for this. You can pick, you're interested in writing .NET code, you could put .NET, so you could put C# in there. So they've got various runtime environments, so you can run different types of code, but we're interested in running JavaScript in Node.js. Let's just pick those as a default, and I want Windows as the operating system, and I'm not bothered about storage, I'm going to do review and create that. And then that's going to take a couple of minutes to go and create. Okay, that's now been created, so let's go and have a look at our resource. So I'm just going to go back into home and let's have a look in demo functions. And there we go, that's all now nicely created. Obviously we've got no functions here now, and what it's trying to get me to do is create the functions, and what we'll do in the next step is we're going to create 3 functions in VS Code Desktop, which, if you don't know what VS Code is, it's a very, very lightweight, free development environment. So it sounds scary because it's development, but really the code that you're going to have to write for this is minimal. So let's get going and let's go create that in VS Code. Okay, so now it's time to create our code for Azure Functions. So to do this, we need a tool called VS Code, and when you click on the Azure Functions in the portal, and you remember that icon I showed you, which tells you how to create VS Code, it brings you to this document, and I strongly encourage you to read this document here, because this takes you step by step. So a couple of the things, obviously you need Visual Studio Code, which is this icon. You can just Google that and download it. You also need a couple of extensions, so you can extend VS Code with adding extra facilities on that third parties and Microsoft have created for themselves. And then effectively, if you just go through this, you want to go to the workspace, create a function, and you want it to be HTTP triggered, function, add to workspace. So I'll just do all that for you now. But before I do it, what I'm going to do is I've already created a blank folder for this, so I'm just going to open up that folder, and obviously there's going to be nothing in it. It's in my directory called code, and it's this one here, and you can see the code in there. There's absolutely nothing in it. But to draw your attention to the functions I've created, I've got Azure Functions there, which is what that document's referring to, and I've also got the Azure Developer CI, and I've got down here Azure Tools. So those are the extensions I've got running to help me do my functions. And so the first thing that comes to mind is you'll see this thing here. If you click there, Azure, you'll see that you can connect the first time. I've already connected to mine, so it's open my subscription. If you expand that, and you can actually view what's in your subscription. So that's the version I've got that I did the previous video on. If I expand that down and look in functions, you'll see that I've got my 3 functions. So these are the ones that we need to create now in order for you to be able to use that with your PCF component, so you can call SignalR. So let's just take a look at what functions we've got in our demo Azure container app that we've just created. Now, currently there's none. So what do we need to do? We need to go and create some. So to do that, if you see this workspace down here, I'm just going to make this bigger actually. Hopefully it'll be better for you. So you see this here, workspace, and if I hover over that, it says Azure Functions. So what I want to do is I want to create a function now, and I want to create the function in the directory here. This is called the command palette if you've never seen it, and this is where it's going to ask me now some questions about the function I need. So I want to create this function in the folder that I'm currently in, which is C drive code C365 SignalR demo functions. I want it to be JavaScript because we said the runtime was Node.js, and I want it to be, in this case, Model 3. Now, Model 4, I won't go into that now, but you probably want to look into Model 4, but Model 3 is the one I did the previous demo on, so I just want to make sure it's exactly the same. And I want it to be HTTP trigger. So Azure Functions can be called by all kinds of different ways. So you can have timers kicking off, you can have things like send grids, which I think is something to do with emails, but there's a load of events that you can fire your function off, but more often than not, it needs to be a HTTP trigger. And so the HTTP trigger effectively means that when this gets deployed, if you remember that we called our Azure function C365 demo SignalR Azure websites.net, I think that was it, that creates you an endpoint. And that means that you can call it with code just like you can call any website. And if you know how to call it with the URL in code, that will fire your function. So let's go create the first function, and it's going to be called negotiate. So I want to do it exactly the same as what I've done in the previous video. So I'm going to call it negotiate, and it needs to be function. And what's going to happen now is the build process has now created me a container, if you like, below negotiate with the function JSON and also the index. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to it. If you've ever watched Blue Peter, here's one I prepared earlier. So I'm just going to go to negotiate, and I'm going to go to the index, and I'm going to copy this code. That's all I'm going to do. Paste that in there. Now all that's doing is it's taking the connection info and it's creating a connection with SignalR. Then I want to take the configuration information about the function JS and I want to copy that. And Control C, Control V. And so I'm not going to go into this in too much detail at all because you probably need, this isn't about trying to learn how to code. This is purely about how to get the SignalR running, but there's loads of documentation on this. Just know that once I create this function is going to be used in PCF to create the handshake with SignalR, i.e. make the phone call and keep the phone call open. So that says, I've connected and I want an open connection. I want you to call me back as soon as you've got some information for me to act upon in my screen. So that's perfect. Next thing I need to do is I need to go and create another function. So I'm going to go back and do exactly the same. Create the function, HTTP trigger, and I can't remember what I called it. I called it send message. So I'm going to call it send message in here. And I want to keep them the same because obviously I want to use the same code in the PCF component. And function, and that's perfect. Now I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go send message function.json, and I'm going to go to my code here. Function JSON, I'm going to Control V that, and then I want the index from my copied version, which is that. Control C, paste that in. So effectively all this is doing, it's creating us a message, an Azure function, which takes a message in effectively. So it takes a message which is going to call a particular SignalR hub, and it's going to pass in the actual message you send from Power Apps. So it's going to relay that, and then Azure SignalR will then transmit that to all of the other listeners on the line. Then I need to do one more. Go back down to here, and I need to go here, and I need to do create function, HTTP trigger. I can't remember what it's called again, so I'm going to look to my sample. It's called send chat message. Oh, I copied the wrong one there. So what I'll do is I'll go quickly. I'll probably pause the video and I'll copy in, because what I've done is I've copied the send chat message into the send message. So I need to create one now called send chat message and function. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that I've got exactly the right code in there. So Control C that. So I'm in send chat. I'm in send chat message on index.js. I'm going to go to send chat message there. Paste that in. Then I'm going to go to the functions. Get that. Paste that in, and then I'm going to go to the send message, which they're pretty much identical anyway, to be fair. Control C. Paste that. And then finally, I just want to get this one. The only thing really different is the message, which is defining what the target is, the event that's happening, so that you can then act on that in Power Apps. And we can write a handler. So, for example, let me just go into that one quickly. So if somebody types a chat message in Power Apps, we need to differentiate the fact they've typed a chat message against whether they've typed in a YouTube URL so that we can act upon it. And the way I've done that is I've created this thing called target. So I know it's a new message, whereas in YouTube, it'll be a new YouTube message. And so that will come down back into the PCF component saying, Fred over there has just typed in a YouTube URL, and because I know it's of type YouTube message, I can then go and change the player rather than the chat message. So it purely is a way of differentiating. And to be honest, you could extend this so you only have one message, which is send generic message, which has a type on it, which is either YouTube or chat message. But for simplicity, I've just broken this out into two separate Azure functions. So let me go and save all that now. So that's perfect. What we need to do now is we need to go into Azure and we need to get this deployed. Deploy to function app. And so if we bring up, deploy that, and you can see what's happening now. It's using MPM to go and do this for me, and it's going to go to Azure, and it's going to go and you can see down here deploying to C365 SignalR demo functions, because that's the one I clicked on. I said to deploy to that app, and this takes a few seconds, probably take a minute or so, so I might pause the video. Right, okay, so now we've got a message saying deployment to C365 SignalR demo function is now complete. Brilliant. Let's close that. And so with a bit of luck, now we can go here and we can go refresh. And if that's worked, we should see our three functions. So there you go. Negotiate, send chat message, send message. Brilliant. So let's just go verify that in the portal. So if we go here and go to overview, hopefully, there you go. There's our three new messages, which is absolutely perfect. So they're all working. You can, if you like, go into the send chat message and you can go to code and test and you can go and run these things now. Again, this will take a few seconds. And you can see the files that we've actually passed in. So you've got functions.js there and you've got your index here. You can get your function URL, which is going to give you how to call it in code, but also you can test and run it. So let's just pass in body of hello, run. Now I've got a funny feeling this is going to fail because I've not put the connection string into, so we won't know how to connect to SignalR. I can't remember I've done that. Yeah, it's failed. Yeah, perfect. I think that's failed. So it's quite a good test actually, because what that means is I need to go and get the connection string for the SignalR instance that we created. And the way we do that is if we go into this one, and then we go to keys, and then we copy that to the clipboard. Then let's go back here. There's one thing, I'm going to just bring up Notepad because there's one thing I need to remember. I can't remember what the connection key in the config needs to be, so I'll pop that in there. In fact, that doesn't like the right key I've copied, does it? So let's go back into that one. It's SignalR Functions, not that one. Let's go into the SignalR demo. Let's go into keys, and we want to copy that there. That's what we need. And then I'm going to go into now the one I know is working, so I'm going to copy the key for the connection string. So I need to go find the functions here, and I need to go into configuration. Let that load, and the one we want is that, so I need to copy that and close that. And now let's go back into our demo functions, and I'm going to go to configuration. So what this is doing effectively is it's telling the Azure Functions how to connect to SignalR, because if you don't tell it which SignalR instance there could be millions out there, and if you don't tell it which one's yours, then it's not going to be able to find it. And the way you do that is you just create yourself a new application setting. You do and paste that in because it has to be that connection string there. Then we're going to go and copy that, and we're going to paste that in there, and we're going to OK that, and then we're going to save, continue. Then hopefully our Azure function will now be able to create a connection through to SignalR. So let's go and give that a test overview. Let's look at the negotiate one because that's the one that opens the original connection. Negotiate, code test. Test and run. Okay, run. So now we've got a 200 response, that's brilliant. So we've got an access token. So now that means that our Azure function can connect to SignalR. So the next piece of the puzzle is we need to use these three Azure functions inside of our brand new PCF component. So the next stage is we need to do a little bit more in VS Code. So let's get that done, and I'll show you how to create a PCF component from scratch. And I promise you, we're getting close to the Power App. I know this seems like a lot of work, but to be honest, once you've done this and you've got this all set up, and if you need to extend it, it becomes much easier. So for example, I needed to extend it so it included a chat box because I only had the first proof of concept was purely a YouTube URL. It was really quick to add the chat box. You'll find a lot of this is infrastructural setup, and once you've done it once, it's quite easy to maintain it and change it as you're going forward. So let's get on with the PCF component and get this tested. Right, now we're getting into the juicy stuff. So now we're going to create a PCF component, and the PCF component is a way to extend Power Apps so you can add your own controls. So if you're used to adding the normal out-of-the-box controls, they will also be PCF components. And the easiest way to get started is there's two fantastic articles here that are real step-by-step. One is create and build a code component, and the other is package a code component. They're all on Microsoft Learn. The thing I'd like to bring to your attention is you're going to need VS Code, and you're also going to need a library called Node.js, which allows us to manage packages and bring them down from the internet to save you a whole host of time. And then finally, a really important one is you need the Microsoft Power Platform CLI. So I've got a empty folder here called C365 SignalR Demo PCF. And if you look at my extensions, let's scroll down here, you'll notice I've got one called Power Platform Tools. If you don't have this installed, just search for it in the marketplace and click install about there. I've got it. Let's go back here and let's go back to the documentation to see what it's suggesting. So first off, it says in a terminal window, create a new folder, which I've done, then cd into the folder, which I've done, and then create a new component by using pack PCF init. Obviously, I've got an empty folder, and in a terminal window, which you can get to here, I've got it. So what I'm going to do is I've done this already, so you can, in VS Code, you can press the up and down arrows, which will give you previous commands. So I'm going to say pack PCF init, namespace club365, PCF signal demo, template field, and press enter. Now keep your eyes on what's happening here. There you go. That's perfect. And the other thing it says is be sure to run MPM install. So MPM install is going to be the thing that analyzes your code, and it will look in package.json. It will bring down all of the required libraries that are needed. So what I've got here is I've also got another version that I know works, because I knew that there was a problem with SignalR. So I'm just going to copy, because you need that line there. I'm going to copy the whole thing, and I'm going to paste that over there. So that will give me all the required libraries. In fact, I don't think you even need the ASP.NET one, because I think it's not supported. So let's just leave that one in there. So that's telling npm install when it runs to bring down that library, because obviously we're going to use SignalR. So I'm going to Control C that. Okie dokie. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to go copy two more pieces of code. I want to go and copy the control manifest. And I'm only going to copy the bit below control, because you'll notice there's a constructor name which refers to the constructor name here, the name of the thing I've called it, whereas in this one it's called something different. So I only want to wipe all that out, and I want to paste that in and Control C that. And effectively all this is doing is, you know, when you go to Power Apps and when you add a control on, you'll see there's a properties window that allows you to bind to those properties and change the behavior of the control. When you're creating a custom one, this is exactly how you do it. So I've created 6 properties here called the SignalR connection. That's going to be the connection to my Azure function. This is the YouTube in and out. When I want to basically change the YouTube as a user in Power Apps and send that out to everybody else that's watching it, I will set the YouTube in, and then when somebody else has changed it, my property will come in as out, save chat message, and then obviously the sender in is just the person sending the message. The other thing I want to do is I've also got some code here, index.ts. So I copied that. Now I was thinking, well, it's not really very well documented, and if I'm going to share this code, you probably need it documented. So it's a nice little trick. What I did, and this is really cool. So I'm in ChatGPT here, and I said, please document this code so that a beginner could understand it. I want to copy and paste it. And all I did is I then pasted the entire code in, and ChatGPT then started to document the code for me, which is fantastic, and it can do way more than this. So one beautiful example is I implemented support for the YouTube functionality, so you could paste in a YouTube URL and have that shown on everybody's screen. And I thought, well, if I'm going to test this with the team, it'd be nice to be able to chat to them. So I pasted the code in as far as I've got, and I said, this now supports YouTube, but I'd also like to support a chat control bind to a gallery control. Can you implement it? And I'm not going to lie, it wrote all of the code to support the chat box on the right hand side, and it just worked. It even told me how to change the control manifest file to add 2 new properties. So if you haven't used ChatGPT for things like code, or I think you could use GitHub Copilot, get stuck in, because it's a real time saver. And so I think everything I do nowadays, pretty much, I think, well, can I get some help with ChatGPT? And a lot of the times you can. So I'm going to copy that beautifully documented code, and I'm going to go paste that into my index.ts. Now, there is going to be one thing wrong with this, and that's that constructor there, because that's copied from the other file. And so what we need to do is go get this constructor name, and we need to paste that into there. So all things being well, you need to make sure you save. What I'm now going to do is, because I've not done that MPM install, so we don't have a node modules library here yet. And so if we try and run this, you can already see the squiggles here. It doesn't know what SignalR is. It doesn't know what the component framework are. And these are because they're implemented in third-party JavaScript libraries that either Microsoft or the community have built. And so what we could do is we could go and download those all individually from the internet and just put them in as a folder and reference them up. But that's such a pain. So there is a really quick way of doing it. It does take a while to run, but it's way quicker than you're doing it manually. You just do MPM install. Now I just need to make sure I've saved everything. Cool, I have. Now you should start to see a node modules folder appear in here when it's got so far. And it's pretty big, but it does the job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this now, and when it's finished, I'll show you what it's done. Okay, so that's now back, and we've got a build. We've got a few libraries that are deprecated. We're not going to worry about those right now. And so what's happened is we've now got these node modules, and that is incredible. Look at all the libraries it's brought in. It's like mind-blowing. Imagine doing all that manually. So that's really, really useful. And hopefully we go back to here, you'll notice once we've done a build in a second, these will start to get unsquiggled. So the next thing we need to do is npm run build, just to see if everything compiles. That's perfect now. So we've got all of our code generated, which is absolutely perfect, and we're on fire. We need to package this up. So we've got our code here. It's beautifully documented. So let's go package it up, because we need to get it into the solution store so that we can use it in our Power App. Right, so now we want to package our component up. So we want to take our code and turn it into something that can be distributed into our solution store. And the way we do that is we follow the documentation here, which is package a code component, which is exactly what we want to do. So let's go through the guidance. So the first thing it wants to do is make a directory and then change into the directory. So let's do that. So let's do make directory solutions, and let's cd into solutions. Perfect. And then it says you need to do pack solution in it, publish name. Okay, yeah, perfect. So I've got one prepared here. So I'll do my up arrow. So I want to do pack solution. No, I want to do pack solution in it, publish name club 365, and then I always use prefix as ours. As it says, it needs to be unique to your environment. Right, so we've done that, and we've got some code in here now. So we've got everything. We've got the boilerplate files that we need in order to create our solution. So what's it say next? It now needs us to pack solution add reference. So effectively the files inside of here don't do anything. It's just an empty shell. So we need to tell it about the project we've created. And the way we do that is the add reference, which again I've got here. I thought I had it here somewhere. There it is. And I need to do it down to, oh dear, demo PCF. Press enter. Perfect. Cool, next up. So we've done that. To generate the zip file, you literally copy that. Cool, let's go into there and let's run that. Cool, there we've got it, solutions.zip, and just to verify that that's got our code in, what we need to do is go to solutions bin, debug, solutions, just have a look what's in it. So we've got controls in here, and there it is, there's our PCF controls. So that's now compiled, and all of the JavaScript we've had, it's turned it into something that the Power Platform can understand. So that's absolutely buzzing. Right, next up, what we need to do is try and deploy this into our Power Apps environment so that it can be used inside of Power Apps. So we go to make, powerapps.com, and then simply what we need to do is go into solutions. There we go. Right, now I need to import a solution, and now we're going to browse all the way to that zip file. So you can see I've been working on something else, which is actually a video. I might do a video on this one. I'm working on something else, which is a video player that wraps an open source library that allows you to play like Vimeo, Wistia, YouTube videos, and have a lot more control than the normal media one. So I might make a video of how to do that at some point. But anyway, I digress. Let's go into C drive code. We want to go to the SignalR demo. We want to go into solutions. We want to go to bin, debug. If you want to make this production, you're happy with it, you've tested it, you won't do it like this. You'll actually slightly change the command, but we're running in just a development mode, so I'm just proving a concept. Next, version 1. So that imports. This can take a while, so I'll probably have to pause the video. Cool, solution is now imported successful. I definitely should have given it a better name, I know. So publish all customizations. So this will now it's installed, now you need to publish it out so it's available to your Power App. Okie dokie, so that's now everything done, and we can move on to creating the Power App. But just before I do that, this is something that's probably going to catch you out. I just want to explain it. If you want to change the codes, obviously you're going to, because as you're developing, you want to keep changing things around and adding functionality, etc. There's two things that will catch you out. It's to do with versioning, because if I was to deploy that same packaging again, it's going to say you've already got this deployed, you can't have it. What I've been doing is I've been incrementing the version number in here, and then there's another one down in here, somewhere down in here, there. I just increment them, so I go 1.1, and always make sure you increment either or of those two version numbers so that Power Apps will go, it's a new version. What I'll do is I'll deploy that, and then when you open your Power App with a new version, Power Apps will say to you, would you like to update to the latest version, which you then click yes, and it will give you the latest changes. So those two are really important. They're not very well documented either, so they will catch you out. So definitely get used to changing those version numbers around. Anyway, let's get on to make the Power App. Okay, so let's go create a Power App and let's put all this together. This is where it gets really exciting. So let's go new Canvas app, SignalR 2. Tablet is perfect. By the way, you could use this on the mobile phone as well. It works just as well. And let's go new screen and let's get a pre-done layout. So let's go for, we want 2 screens. We're going to have the YouTube player there, and we're going to have the chat client here. But the first thing I need to do is I need to test actually if we can get our PCF component on here first of all. And the way you do that is you click this get more components, and then you click here code. It's nicely hidden that. And then luckily what we can do is we can see that that one's our PCF signal demo. That's what we actually called it. So let's import that. And then what's happened now, you see under this code components, it's appeared there. So we can pretty much throw it anyway because it's transparent. And there you go. That's really good because now we've got our 6 properties: chat message in out, YouTube in out, SignalR, that's going to be our connection to Azure Functions, and then the person sending. So that's lovely. That's lovely. So let's go and create a media control. Let's go and add one of them. Let's just build the screen up first. Pick that one. Add that in there, and I want to move him top. Then I also want an input box, text input, add that there, move him up. That's lovely. I'm not going to worry too much about the layouts. In fact, what I will do is I will sort the width out because it does my head in. So width, and let's do parent dot width, and then width on this one, parent dot width, sorted. Now we need to come over to here. Now we need a vertical, vertical gallery, and we're not going to bother with that at the moment. And what we also need to do is we need to add in what I want is a horizontal layout, because I'm going to put the text box and also the button in it. So I'm going to go to layout, which is, where's layout? There it is. And I'm going to add a horizontal container, which is fine. And in that, I'm going to add a text input, and I'm also going to add a button, which is fine, right? Let's sort that out. I'll sort the height out in a second. So that's kind of all we need. So what we've got now is we've got our media control, a text input where we're going to change the YouTube, and we're going to control what gets displayed in here by typing a YouTube URL. This we're going to customize, and we're going to add chat messages to it. So as the chat messages get sent from myself and also from somebody else, they will appear in this gallery. So let's get started with building that. Right, so before I actually start wiring up the controls to all the properties, the thing I want to do first of all is I want to go to our PCF component, and I want to set one really important property. Now this property is SignalR Hub connection. As you remember, we created that inside of the PCF component. And what this does, it allows you as a Power Apps developer to pass the endpoint for your Azure functions. So for example, if you wanted to change it to a different Azure function that connects to a different SignalR, you can do that, and it gives you the flexibility to do it. So the way we get this is we go to the Azure function, and what I did just to show you how I got here, if we pick up the negotiate one, for example, and we go code and test, just wait for that to load, there we go, and then get a function URL, and all we want to do is just copy that to the clipboard. And let's go to our Power App, and in fact I'll do this in Notepad here. All I want is that URL. I'm going to Control C that, I'm going to paste that in there, and I'm going to give it a save. Oh, it's auto, so it's going to give it a save. There you go. Before I do anything else, what I need to do is I've just remembered I need to tell you about one thing, and it's something called CORS, and it stands for Cross Origin Resource Script, I think. And it's a security thing built into browsers. And what you need to do is you need to go to, because you're going to go cross domain here, it protects the browser effectively. We need to go to our Azure Functions, and you need to click that, enable access control or our credentials, and you need to put in these URLs. Now these may change and you can't wildcard them. I've not found a way to wildcard them. So if you do know of a way, let me know. All I can see is you can have one wildcard, but that doesn't seem to work. The portal.azure gets added in by default. And what we need to do is add in the apps.powerapps, and then obviously when you run this, it gets put onto an authoring domain as you turn it in, and you put it into play mode, or you stick it into Teams, for example. So if you add those three, and I'll add those into the notes as well, that should cater for you. But if you get any problems of like this not connecting, one good way of diagnosing it is if you look in the console, what happens is we put a load of console into our PCF component. And where you see these statements like console.error, what will happen is in the console here, you'll get these errors. So if you look up here, I noticed there was one. Here you go, perfect. So access to fetch from origin is being blocked by CORS policy, authoring. So what I did in that case, I went and added this URL. Let's just make sure I have added that URL actually into the Azure function CORS, and then that error will go away. So always bring up your developer tools. So you just right click. So effectively you do this, you right click and do inspect, and that'll bring up your developer tools. Look on the console and look for the error messages that are coming out. So in fact I did, because actually that was an old message, because you can see this is what you're looking for. Information WebSocket connected to, and that's the full URL to our hub. So you can notice that that's the Azure function that we did. So it's perfect. Rightio. And I'll just double check that. I added this one in, didn't I? Which I think, yeah, it's the same as that, so it's perfect. So that's why it worked. It wasn't going to work if I didn't do that. So that's really key you do that. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to start to wire up the functionality on here. So I've got an input box called text chat message, and I've also got a button called BTN send. And when people effectively click that button, I want to be able to send whatever they type in here. I want to set a variable, and that variable is going to be bound to a PCF component, which will then fire off a whole message into SignalR. So here's an example from the working version I've got. That is message like that. That should be fine. And We need to do that one too. So what we're doing there is we're basically setting this variable of our chat message to the text that's in this text box, and then we're resetting it. So we're clearing it out. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to get my PCF component, which is in the left-hand container there, and I want to set chat message in equal to, I can't remember the name of our chat message. The variable we've just set. Okie dokie, and let's give that a save. Then the next thing I need to do is I need to say who's sending the chat message. So if we go to chat message sender, there's a useful little formula called user.fullname. So we go user dot full name like that. That should result, there you go, it's resolved to Mark Jones because it knows I'm logged in. So that's quite useful. So that's possibly ready for a test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it, and I'm going to do inspect, and I'm going to go like that. And what I've done is I've set a breakpoint. So what happens is this process new chat message is come back down from SignalR. So this is really good because it means SignalR's got the message, it's come back down, and it's brought the information back down. And so that SSS is what I typed in there. That's my name. So with a bit of luck, if we step through this, that's gonna, and then we know, yeah, that's actually going to work. That's actually going to work. That's brilliant. That's fantastic. So that now means that we've got the handshake. So we've opened the call, and it also means that we can now send a message and you get a message back. So let's get on with wiring up this gallery here so we can actually see what's coming in. And then what we'll do is we'll get another instance of the window open, and we'll type a chat message in that one, and then hopefully we'll see it in this one. So let's give it a go. Right, so let's get some chat messages on the screen because that's where it gets really exciting. So just to take you through what's happening in this gallery here. So I've got a gallery control there. And what I've done is I've bound its items or its data source to a local table called chat messages. And normally you'd probably do that where you'd probably want to bind to a SharePoint list or a data first table. But in this case, we're literally just going to create a local table called chat messages, and as the messages come in, what we're going to do is we're going to add them to that chat messages collection. And so this thing should automatically refresh because it's bound to it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the app. I've actually already, just for speed, I've actually already added these formulas in. And we go to on start, and if we look at that one, what I've done is I've had a clear collect chat messages with nothing. So it's just an empty collection. And so that will initialize it when the actual application starts. And then, as I mentioned, the gallery here is bound to that chat messages. So whatever's in that chat message will refresh in this gallery. The next piece that we need to do is, obviously, when a message comes down from, say, John or Fraser or Connor on the team, send a message because they've got the app open. A message will go up to SignalR, then SignalR will go, oh, I need to spray that to everybody that's got it open with a connection. We need to listen to that event so that we can then take the message that came down from SignalR and then add it to our collection. And the way we do that, there's an on-change event in here. And what we do is we say, collect into chat messages the new message that came into our output property on our PCF controls. If you remember the code I showed you earlier, inside of there, what we do is we have an event handler that listens for SignalR to come back down. And when it does, we call our own function. And that function effectively just gets the chat message and sets that output property, which is chat message out, into the PCF component so that Power Apps can then pick it up. And so what's going to happen here, chat message comes down, add it to chat message, and it should all be bada bosh. So let's give that a play. Right, okay, test me. There we go. And let's just test another one, Okie doke, that's perfect. So now for the cool bit. Let's see if we go and run this app on multiple browser instances, whether it's going to work or not. So let me just go back to Power Apps. And then I'm going to go to make.powerapps.com. And let's create a few instances. So let's go to apps. And all I want to do, because I've published it, I'm just going to play it. Why can't I play it? There's usually a play icon there. It's disappeared. It's disappeared on me. Why can't I play it again? Here we go. And then let's do one more. play. Right, so I've now got 3. I'm going to drag them off like that. And what I want to do is I want to, right, that's good. We can see 3 chat messages. So let's go for it. So this is obviously me logged into all of these, so it's going to say Mark Jones every time. But honestly, if I shared this with the team, and I probably should have booked a call with somebody to actually demo this with me, a colleague could have this open and they'd see exactly the same experience of what you're going to see now. So I'm going to say, hi, send. And can you see that straight away? It's coming. So I'm going to say, hi back at you. And let's go scroll there. And there you go. So there is no refresh control. There is no timer control or doing anything there. That is literally Power Apps coming down saying, SignalR coming down and saying, oi Power Apps, I've got a message. Go put it into that collection and show it on the screen. So that's incredible. And if you think about what the benefits of this are, going back to my previous example, the reason you want to do this is because it's ultra efficient. Power Apps is only going to do any processing when there's something new. So it's not going to have to do a refresh timer control every 3 milliseconds, which could have, if you've got a few of those, that could actually lock the screen up. It's also at some point, based on your data source, you're probably going to get throttled. So most back-end data sources, they have some kind of throttling on there so that you don't bombard their service. And I imagine after a few thousand calls in an hour or something, you're going to get an access denied because you've used it too much. And also you've got to think about bandwidth uses on mobiles, etc. If you're constantly saying, refresh this, refresh this, refresh this, refresh this, and you're probably having to send up more information about what you want refreshing, your payload's going to be more. So if you're a mobile user on mobile data, you don't want that timer control running all the time. And also, you've got to think about the Power App needs to be running all the time. And so this is perfect because it will literally just update all the screens at once. And like I say, main uses are things like gaming. Chat is definitely a big one, but you could use it for dashboards and all kinds of things. So that's really cool. Now, the last part of this demo here is, the build is we want to wire up this YouTube player. This was the first idea when I thought I want to create a SignalR app and see how far it can go. This is the first example I had. So what I did is I created a YouTube player, and what we're going to do is put a YouTube URL in. And what I want that to happen then is the YouTube URL to change the player on everybody's instance. So let's get unstuck with that. Rightio, so this is very, very similar to the way we did the chat messages. In fact, in some respects, it's actually easier. So just to talk you through it, here's our PCF SignalR control. And what we've got here is a property called YouTube URL in, and it's bound to a variable called YouTube URL. And so what will happen is when we set a YouTube URL there, the PCF control will wake up, go to SignalR, say there's a new message, it's your type of YouTube, it's a URL, go and spray that down to everybody else. How do we get that set? Well, it's really quite simple. We've got a text box here, which I'm expecting people to type a YouTube URL into. I probably need to put some validation on there, but I'll leave that up to you. But literally, you just go onto here and you go to the on change, and you'll see we've got an update context, YouTube URL, self-text. So whatever they type in is going to get pushed into that variable. And because it's pushed into that variable, that will force the PCF component to wake up and say, let's go talk to SignalR and let's spray it out. And then what happens is once it comes back down into the PCF control, SignalR's communicated back saying there's a new URL. It sets the code that we've written, sets the YouTube URL out. And just to make that point clear again, that's bound to the YouTube URL out. So if we now go give this a run, what should happen is it should just work. So let's give it a go. I can't think of anything else I'd need to do. So let's go and get this YouTube URL and let's paste that in there. And all I'm going to do is press the enter key, which is going to fire the onChange event. There you go, perfect. And if we look in these have already changed, look. So we load these up again. Let's go and get I probably should have picked another URL. Let's go get this one. Let's pick that one. So you can see them. Let's paste that into there. Press enter, and they've all changed. Perfect. So the only other thing to note there is you might have been wondering what the context was on the onChange. So this should start media. Now, I've stopped at this point because I just wanted to get the video out. But what I was trying to do, and I think there's potentially a bug or some kind of browser setting, I wanted to, once the video was changed in everybody's browser, I wanted the thing to actually start an autoplay. I can't get the media player autoplaying at all. So if you do know how to do that, let me know, because that would be really good, because then you're into the realms of like, well, actually, we could create extra SignalR messages to say, I could be the controller here, and I could say, if I go forward into my video at like 1:40, and as I stop scrolling, send a message up to say, this video now needs to play at 1:40. So all of the other people watching could have the same version of the same second being played in their YouTube, which leads to a lot of good things. So you could then, that's the bare bones of creating something like a collaborative editing tool. So you could have a corporate video that's been done by a third party that you bring in and you want to review it with your marketing team, for example, and you want to put comments on it. And as you're scrolling through it, you can all put your comments, save those away to a database, and then that could form a report. You go back to the person that provided the video to, so you can make changes. This is really, really powerful, I think. So that is the end of the demonstration. I really do hope you give that a go. If you're watching this on YouTube or in the Academy, there's two options for you now. If you're in the Academy and you're a Platinum member and you'd like to see all of the code, I've put the sample projects somewhere below this video. If you're not a Platinum member in the Cloud 365 Academy, then I strongly suggest you to join. There's a 7-day free trial, which will allow you to get the code. And if you don't want to carry on with our journey with us, you just cancel. It's really easy. You don't pay anything for that. If you do want to carry on, then currently it's about $23 a month, and you can cancel any time. But if you'd like the code for this, then just come and join us in the Academy. And also feel free on the post in Platinum Exclusives area to ask me any questions. So I really do hope that's given you some inspiration to go and put SignalR into your Power Apps, because I absolutely love it and I've got plenty of ideas. And what I'd like to do, which I need to stop doing these things, what I'd love to do is show you an example of, so Yahoo Finance has got a share trading API, so you can call it and you can get all the latest stock prices. And so remember I said in SignalR what you can do, in Azure Function, what you can do is you can have a timer job. So you could have a timer job every second that goes to Yahoo Finance, gets all of the stock prices that you're interested in, and then calls SignalR and says, here's some new stock prices, and you pass in a big collection. And then the Power Apps, whoever's got it open, could listen for that, and you could create some really nice stock trading dashboard. And again, it wouldn't need any refresh because the stock prices are just changing automatically inside a Power App. So I might have a go at that, I don't know. I need to start stopping myself doing these cool things. Anyway, I hope that's of help, and I'll see you in the Academy if you want to get the sample code. Bye.